What is up, YouTube? Johnny B here again today. We're going to be bringing you a new video. As you know, I have been working on my FRS for quite a long time now, slowly modifying it, upgrading it, doing all kinds of things. Started off with suspension, we went wide body, we got meatier tires with more grip. Then after that, we decided to get a catch can. Then we got a P3 cars gauge, so it'll tell us our AFRs, oil pressure, oil temperature, all kinds of things like that that are very useful. And then after that, or before that actually, we went E85. So everything that we've been doing has been leading up to this moment. The past video we did the oil cooler to keep all the temperatures of the oil at a nice stable area. We don't want them to go too high because they're going to thin out the oil and then you can have some engine problems or engine failure. So all those mods leading up to this, and today we are going to be installing the turbo kit. So the first thing we're going to do is start off by removing all the parts or components that are going to be in the way of installing this turbo kit. So we're going to just remove the front bumper, remove the core support, remove a bunch of things that are just going to be in the way for the install. So this is gonna be the replacement that we're gonna be doing on the original exhaust system. It currently just had the stock over pipe and the stock front pipe. So we're gonna be replacing it with a Blitz front pipe and a Tomei over pipe. So these are gonna free up the exhaust system a little bit more, mainly because of the fact that it's thicker piping. And not only that, this doesn't come with a cat and the original factory one did. So we're gonna free that up. We're gonna go completely catless. So hopefully that'll make some loud popping noises, maybe some flames out the back. Those are the main goals. So we're gonna replace these at the same time. These aren't really part of the turbo kit, but we wanna go ahead and do this at the same time because we're gonna tune it. That way we can tune it all together. All right guys, so we're finally gonna start with the first part of the turbo. We're gonna go ahead and install the turbo header. It's really easy to do right now because I just took off the header that I had on there previously. So as soon as we put this on, this section here is exactly where the turbo is gonna mount and just make it all that much easier. Then we could just start plumbing and everything. So what we're gonna do is install the hot parts first. All right, so now that we have the turbo manifold on, or the header, the turbo header, I went ahead and put on the Blitz front pipe and the Tomei over pipe, which you guys saw, you know, the difference between stock and the aftermarket. They're just a little bit thicker. So to put that on, we need to go ahead and install the turbo with the down pipe so we can start plumbing the exhaust all the way back. Make sure that nothing's gonna be rubbing, nothing's gonna be even close to something else because we don't want any vibrations from the exhaust when we're out there driving. So let's go ahead and put the turbo on. Okay, so now the turbo is fully bolted down. So It's really easy to get to the bolts on the full-blown motorsports kit, just because you can see them. Look at that, you can see all four. I've seen some other turbos where they completely cover that, and it's just like a really painful job to do. But this is relatively easy. It has a 17mm head on the bolt and then a 14mm nut. And then I just went ahead and tightened it down. Obviously, I refreshed the gasket a little bit, gave it some copper sealer just to make sure that we don't have any exhaust leaks. So now it's time to do the oil drain and the oil feed. So let's go ahead and do that now. So to set up the oil lines for the turbo, the first thing we're gonna need to do is replace our oil pan. Most of the time when you buy turbo kits or when you build your own kit, you need to go ahead and add a oil drain inlet to your pan. But since I already have one, we're just gonna go ahead and replace it. All right, so now that we have all the bolts off, you have to actually pry this off because the silicone that they use to seal it also holds it in place really well. So I had to pry it off in this section. I'm not afraid to bend it. Obviously you can bend them back if needed. The steel is really strong. But since I have a second oil pan, it doesn't really bother me to bend it. It just makes the process that much easier because this thing was really stuck on there. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull it out. And there it is, oil pan out. Here's a side-by-side comparison of the stock oil pan on my left and then the modified one on my right. All they did was add the little AN fitting with like a lengthened pipe, just so that the oil drain will just go directly to that, and that way we have proper oil drain. All right guys, we finally got the oil pan all bolted up, and after that I went ahead and connected the turbo, the oil drain outlet. I connected it to the oil pan, so we're all good to go for the oil drain. And now the next step is to go ahead and hook up the oil feed. So I'm gonna show you guys the easiest way to do it on this cart. All right, so what we're gonna need is to remove the oil pressure. This is it right here. It just has one little ground wire to it. And what you're gonna do is remove it, and then you're gonna replace it with this, kind of like an oil splitter. So it connects where the actual oil pressure sensor would go normally. And then we're gonna connect the oil pressure to one side. And then we're gonna go ahead and connect the oil feed line to this side, therefore getting pressure into the line. And then after that, it's gonna route straight directly to the top part of the turbo, because we want the pressure to come in from the top and then drain out from the bottom. It's always the best way to do it when setting up your oil system. All right guys, there goes the oil feed line. I went ahead and plumbed up everything, and I'm just gonna go ahead and tighten it. You wanna make sure you put enough pressure. These are AN fittings, so the tighter they are, the less likely they are to leak. So that's always good. So if you look at the feed line, it goes a little bit around the turbo, and then it connects where the oil pressure used to connect. Then we have the oil pressure sensor, and then obviously the splitter that I showed you guys before. So there it is. The oil system for the turbo is all plumbed up now. All right guys, here we have all of the plumbing laid out. This is gonna be how we're gonna plumb our intercooler. As you can see, the piece that's gold plated goes directly to my intake. It goes down and around, and it goes straight to the intercooler on that side. And then on the opposite side, this little section right here goes connected to the turbo. Then it goes over my frame and down all the way to the intercooler in this section. And then the filter in the center, that just goes directly to the turbo. So it's gonna be kind of like a parent intake, but obviously with a big old turbo right there. So let's go ahead and get it installed. All right, so now all the hard components, all of basically the turbo kit itself is installed. They were fairly simple to install because it was just the header hooking up to an exhaust, which is what you normally do even when you're not boosted. And setting up all of the tubing for the intake is like doing an intake. Obviously you just have to route it around everywhere. But it was fairly simple. The only thing that would be a little bit more difficult is setting up your oiling system. So finding out where to do the oil feed and where to do the return for the oil. One thing that I do recommend is that if you're gonna go ahead and turbo your car, to just buy the supplied, or they sell an actual oil pan that comes with the fitting for the oil return. I recommend going that route. It would be so much easier than having to do with how my setup is, where you have to actually buy like the AN fitting, cut a hole in your oil pan, weld it. It's a lot of work. So I don't really recommend it. So if you have that extra money to spend, make sure you save up to also get the oil pan that comes with the proper fittings for it. We actually finished doing all the install. I just ran into a couple issues. One of the main issues is figuring out how to do the vacuums, because as you guys know, I bought a used kit. So with a used kit, I don't get a base tune, or I don't get instructions on how to do the install. So I had to figure this all out on my own, asking around other people. I had some people on Instagram that actually helped out to have the same kit, which was awesome. So one of the first things that you want to do when installing your turbo kit is to make sure that you have a catch can. So obviously you can check that off on our list. We installed the catch can a long time ago, but the issue was that the NA version of a catch can is completely different of a turbo version of the catch can, so you have to set it up completely different. So the way the catch can is normally set up is there's a breather here that connects to your intake, but in the case of having a boosted car, it doesn't have a connection for that breather. So I just went ahead and put a filter here. This is where the catch can was originally hooked up. So it had one to this breather that goes to the engine block, and then one that went to the intake. So the way we have to set it up now is, if you look back here, right on top of the intake manifold, there is a breather line that goes to another part of the engine that goes from here straight down into another section on the block where there's a breather. So this is where you want to set it up now that you have a turbo, just because, as you can see, this is where a lot of the oil will come from and feed into your intake. As you can tell, the lines are actually yellowing a little bit from the oil kind of going through there, a little bit of blow by. And what that does is it protects your engine from shooting any oil into your intake, which therefore goes into your cylinders, which lowers your octane, which can cause detonation, knock, and all kinds of unwanted things. So a catch can is very important. Another thing that you want to do when upgrading your car to be boosted, you're going to need one of these sensors. This is a 4-bar map sensor. Now the thing with the original one is that it doesn't read boost, and we want it to read boost. So this is definitely something that you need to swap out with a 4-bar, or a 3-bar could actually work. But if you do end up swapping it out before getting a tune or having your tuner there, your car will not start. So also be aware of that. Another thing that I really recommend for you to get if you're going to be going the boosted route with a turbo is to get a boost controller, because with a supercharger you could just change your pulley and that'll obviously change the boost. But with a boost controller on a turbo car, you can actually switch with your cruise control on what setting you want, depending on what you set it to. You can be running 8, 10, 12, 14, whatever your heart desires. You can actually switch between maps with a boost controller, with an electronic boost controller. So that brings me to another thing that I had an issue with, which was my vacuum lines. All right, so the way that you want to set up your vacuum lines is, first, you want to hook up your wastegate. So the wastegate has 2 ports. It has one on top and one on bottom. You want to hook up your vacuum line to the bottom one, and you want to leave the top port vented. So leaving that line open, you want to go ahead and put another line on the actual blow-off valve. So here is the line for the blow-off valve. It goes right off the top. And both of those lines, you're going to want to send them to the back of your intake manifold and hook them up to this connection right here. So it doesn't matter whether you have a manual or an automatic, you want to hook it up here. You're going to have to tee it into this line. This line normally goes to your brake booster, and if you're an automatic, it actually has a cap on it, so you just have to connect to it. Doesn't really matter how you do it, just make sure you find a way to hook it up to that. You're going to have to use different sizes and fittings for the vacuum lines to work. So that's how it's going to be set up if you're not going to be running a boost controller. That's just the way to get vacuum to both of your wastegates and to your wastegate and your blow-off valve. Okay, so the difference if you have a boost controller is, instead of hooking this up to the back part of the intake, you're gonna do the same connection, just the bottom one, leave the top vented. You're gonna run it to your boost controller. So in my case, I have this right here, which is a Grimspeed boost controller that they sell for the FA20 or the Subaru WRX like 2015 and up. So you're gonna wanna connect the wastegate to port number 2, and then port number 3, you're gonna go ahead and send it either to your turbo, so you can follow this line right here, or to a charge pipe that's closest to the turbo. So normally your turbos have a nipple on them where you could hook up that section to, but if they don't, you can do like I did. I went ahead and tapped into the charge pipe, and then we hooked up the vacuum here just so it gets a vacuum source or a boost source that is most accurate if you're closer to the turbo. And then if we go back here to the boost controller, you can see that port 1 is not connected. You want to go ahead and leave that one vented just so it breathes, and that's how you set up the boost controller. And then if you get the same exact model, this wiring here is plug in and play. So there's literally a charcoal canister right underneath the intake here in the back with a blue connection, and you literally just connect that plug into the blue connection. This is the blue connection that's right underneath the back side on the driver's side of your intake manifold. This is where you're gonna go ahead and connect the boost controller. It's literally plug in and play. This normally goes to like a little charcoal sensor that's underneath your intake. So you just hook it up to that, and you have power to your Grimspeed boost controller. So continuing on with the vacuum lines and how to set them up, there's some factory vacuum lines that are right underneath the intake manifold that you actually need to clamp, because from factory they don't come clamped, because obviously there's going to be no way that they're going to pop off because you're always creating vacuum, or when you're in full throttle you're only getting, you know, almost zero vacuum, but it's not really causing any force on it. But when you go down the boosted route where you have either a supercharger or a turbo, you start creating pressure in those lines and they can literally pop off. So if one of your vacuum lines pops off, your car is not gonna wanna run. It's actually gonna wanna just shut off all the time, and it's gonna be really bad. So that's another thing that you really need to do when you're gonna turbo or supercharge your car. So I'm gonna put up a picture here, that way you guys can see the lines. There's gonna be a line coming in from the breather for the fuel tank, and then it goes underneath and hooks up to the charcoal sensor, which is where we got that blue connection from for the boost controller. And then from that one, there's another line that comes out and goes right underneath the throttle body section of the intake manifold. So you want to make sure you clamp those down, because under boost pressure, they will pop off and cause your car to run really bad, and we don't want that. All right, so another thing that we want to go ahead and do is upgrade our cooling system. So that refers to either our water or our oil. So when you install a turbo kit or a supercharger kit, your car is going to be under lots of load, which causes, you know, it starts exerting a lot more heat than normally. So you're going to want to head and install an oil cooler. As you guys saw, I did that in a couple of videos ago before I even went turbo, just to kind of compensate for the fact that I already knew I was going turbo. Because here in Arizona it gets really hot, so a lot of our cooling system isn't going to run as efficient as we want it to. So you're going to want to head and upgrade that. With this kit, it actually comes with upgraded fans that have more CFMs to kind of help keep everything a lot cooler. If you're in Arizona or in any other state that has really high temperatures above 100, we've been getting them at about 120 degrees Fahrenheit here in AZ. I'm probably going to have to upgrade to my radiator to an all aluminum one, get some upgraded fans and a fan shroud, because right now I'm not running a fan shroud, because you have to remove your factory fan shroud and put some aftermarket fans that come with the kit. Another thing that you want to go ahead and do when boosting your FRS or BRZ is that you need to upgrade your fueling. Well, this is obvious, Johnny. Yes, it is, but a cool thing about the FRS BRZ platform is that it has a system that was designed by Toyota that has 8 injectors. So you have 4 direct injectors and 4 port injectors. So with this system, the way that you can tune it, you can actually tune the car to about, I think they have a limit around like 400 horsepower, that the injectors will be perfectly fine, but you need to upgrade your fuel pump at least. So you can actually keep your stock injectors if you don't plan on going above 400 horsepower, which most of us don't really want to, just because if you're gonna go above that, you're gonna have to build your engine. So the thing that tuners recommend is just to upgrade your fuel pump. So the fuel pump I went with was a DW300C. It gives me plenty of fuel, you know, that way we can have so much more tunability, even under the stock injectors. Now the thing with my kit is that it actually came with injectors. They were 550cc, so I went ahead and swapped them out anyways. It costs a little bit more to tune just because of the fact that the tuner is going to have more issues trying to tune your new injectors than the stock ones. The stock ones are actually really easy to tune, but you don't need to. So if you're planning on doing something like that and you're thinking about buying injectors, you don't have to unless you're going really high horsepower or you're going to build your engine to make, you know, some ridiculous power numbers. But if you're just going to be around the 300 range, you just want something simple, you don't really need to upgrade those, just your fuel pump. So the thing with the fuel pump is that you want to make sure you modify it to fit in there properly. Make sure you get it in all the way, because you could have issues with the pump not being seated properly, or, you know, just it falling out of place. So you want to make sure you hold it into place somehow, whether it be through zip ties and stuff like that, because upgraded fuel pumps are going to be longer than your stock fuel pump. So that's just a little thing that you need to be aware, you know, be understanding of when you're going to go ahead and boost your car. All right, guys, that was it for the video. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do any pulls in the car because while we were tuning it and testing it and stuff like that, I actually broke one of the axles. So if I go under too much load, you can actually hear it cracking, but it's still drivable. So I need to go ahead and replace that before I try to do any 0 to 60 times or stuff like that. Also, if you guys have been waiting for the Evo video, I know it's been 2 weeks since I haven't posted a video on that. So I'm gonna go ahead and make sure to work on it. I just haven't had time to work on it lately. But if you guys are looking forward to seeing more videos on the Evo, make sure you stay subscribed, you know, and if you want to see more videos of this, and if you're not subscribed yet, you want to see me do some awesome things with this turbo FRS, make sure you subscribe and stay tuned because there's a lot more videos to come. So as always, you guys have a great day.